Our guest today is an author, keynote speaker, and marketing consultant, helping a diverse global client base compete against the giants they face in the marketplace. He's worked with leaders in consumer packaged goods, performance athletic wear, telecommunications, green energy, and others from Fortune 500s to startups. His book, Killing Giants, 10 Strategies to Topple the Goliath in Your Industry, was hailed by Ad Age as one of the top 10 marketing books in 2011. He received his M.B.A. from the Wharton School after graduating from Washington & Lee's class of 1983. He graduated cum laude with a degree in East Asian Studies. He was the first undergraduate to participate in the Rikyo University Exchange Program in Tokyo, a 4-year varsity athlete, and a member of the Sigma Nu fraternity. Please help me welcome Stephen Denny.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. So, first things first, Professor Shea, Larry, thank you very much for the invitation to come. It's been a lot of fun. Mr. Hind, Mr. Poorman, thank you for connecting me to this august group. This has been a fascinating couple of days. This has been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed tremendously the conversations I've been able to have, and I haven't had a chance to meet all of you, but at least now I'm talking to all of you, so that's good enough for now. It's great to see the breadth of ideas that have been discussed here in this room, and it's great to see all the newness that's happened since I was last here. This is my second time back in 30 years. So while I love to see all what's new, I'm also thrilled to see that not everything is new. And I love to see that a lot of things have not changed in 30 years. Can I show you something really cool before we start? Look at the sole of Goliath's left shoe. Can you see something written there? If you have the book, which I believe you do, thank you, you'll see there's something there, but it's hard to pick out. But because this is the size of a Times Square billboard behind me, we can actually read it here. And on his foot is written, Humilitas occidit superbium. For the Latin scholars in the room, can you please help me? Does anyone? No one. We have one. Yes, go. See that? I was going to ask, are there no Latin scholars in the room? I was going to ask, are there any Latins in the room? And I figured that would be the immediate, obligatory Donald Trump opening joke monologue. So we can skip over that now. We're done. So I'm standing here on stage and I'm talking to venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs in the making. If you're a venture capitalist, you say this sentence roughly once every 20 minutes. If you're an entrepreneur, you hear this sentence roughly once a meeting. So tell me, who are you exactly like? And this is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because, as we've heard for the last 2 days, it's mental shorthand. It's a quick heuristic, it's a rule of thumb. It allows us to quickly comprehend complexity. And that's good. That's great, as a matter of fact. When I spoke to Eric Ryan, who's a co-founder of Method, it's a wonderful company in San Francisco, he told me that they were Aveda for the home. He wanted to take a health and beauty aid sensibility and bring it to home cleaning products. Jim Cook of the Boston Beer Company, the first interview I ever did, Jim said he wanted to take what was so inspiring about the California wine industry from the 70s and apply it to a new category. Herman Mashaba, who was the former CEO and founder of the South African cosmetics brand Black Like Me, told me when he described creating a brand in the townships that he wanted to be the Coca-Cola of hair care product. And I'm sure if Howard Schultz was in the room, and he was being honest with us, he'd probably say that, part of his inspiration was he probably wanted to be the Sam Adams of the coffee business. So it's good to be able to grab that very quickly. However, there's a drawback. And the drawback is it can constrain your thinking. And while it's easy for the receiver of that information to quickly grasp, okay, I understand who you are, let's move on, I do not want that to get in your head and stop you from thinking about who you want to be. The gentleman on the far side of the screen there is Robert McKee. Robert McKee is a national treasure. He is the most sought after expert on the subject of story development and screenwriting. His students have been awarded 63 Academy Awards, 164 Emmys, over 40 Actors Guild Awards, Screen Actors Awards. You get the picture. He literally wrote the book on story. And here he drops this incredible insight on us. He says, give the audience what they want, but not what they expect. Now, when I was with him, he said it a little bit differently, and the twist is fascinating. He said, give the audience what they want, just not the way they expect to get it. That's the heart and soul of storytelling. That's the heart and soul of brand development, and that's something that we should be branding in our heads. This is critically important as we move forward here in our conversation. Quick digression. Killing Giants was a 4-year journey for me from beginning to end. The research never stopped. I still do interviews. I still talk to people, and I'm still capturing these stories, and I use them in talks like this. It's about 90 plus interviews. It's about 40 brand stories that have been captured here over a dozen countries. And what I did, much more ethnographic really than anything else, is I let these people tell their stories. And I did my best, I don't know if I succeeded, but I did my best in writing this book to get out of the way and let these people tell us what they did and how they did. It was meant to be very much a field manual for people like you who are busy and have an absolutely insurmountable challenge in front of you. I'm a big believer in this idea that stories are equipment for living. This is how we learn. This is why we're together. We want to hear from everyone else. We want to hear from our peers and from others who have gone before us so we can extract some of that meaning and apply it to our own lives, because our situation's different. But still, that's what we do. When I have talks like this, typically I find that this material neatly self-organizes. You know, it's 10 working chapters in the book, and as entertaining as it would be for me to bowl through 250 pages in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try to simplify things just a little bit. It organizes neatly into what I would call 3 areas of excellence, 3 big ideas, and that's really where I want to focus today. This is meant to be helpful to you. I'm going to do my best in this impossibly short period of time to deliver something to you that you can use right now. If you take notes, please do. If I think there's something extremely interesting or important that I need you to write down, I will tell you so. I'll give you a quick hand signal that says, write that down. I'll let you know. So that's what I want to do. 3 ideas. Can we do that? Sure we can. Number 1, there are 2 kinds of warfare, asymmetrical and stupid. So says Dr. Conrad Crane of the U.S. Army War College. He's the country's leading expert on insurgency and counterinsurgency. He reminds people like us that it is never our job to fight the way our giant wants us to. This is where we start. This first area of excellence I call seizing the narrative. When I look at how these giant killers have gone on to do something remarkable against companies that on paper should be able to roll over and crush them, and yet somehow they survive and they thrive and they win. One of the ways they do this is by very expertly hijacking the conversation and dragging it to a place where they know they can win. This gentleman here is Jeff Ross. Jeff is the former CEO and founder of New Zealand's own 42 Below Vodka. Former advertising agency executive at Saatchi & Saatchi in Auckland. He told me that he got tired of hearing, in his words, boring, stodgy, conservative clients say no to his ideas. He sounds like every ad agency executive I've ever met in my entire life, actually. However, there's a big difference, and what makes this story unique and makes it worth sharing is he did something about it. And he got together with some friends and collaborators. He said, we got to try this, we got to do something ourselves, and we're going to launch a lifestyle marketing brand, something we can all get excited about, have some fun with. So they picked vodka, of course. In New Zealand, naturally. Did the world need another premium vodka brand? There's only 150 of them, literally. And with few exceptions, they all kind of revolve around this idea of cold, serious, Scandinavian, boring brands. Do we have any boring, cold Scandinavians in the audience today? I should have asked. That could have been so awkward. My goodness. Wait a minute, I am. No. Jeff decided that he needed to do something different. He says here, a lot of people said we couldn't be high-end and irreverent. High-end. He's importing these bottles from France. He's in New Zealand. 99% of the cost of goods in this business, glass. Welcome to vodka. He's distilling this vodka at an extremely high quality level. His website at the time when I interviewed him said, this is the world's most awarded vodka. So that covers high end. Irreverent? How irreverent, Steve? That's the question. That's the elephant in the room, isn't it? Well, you know, I think 42 below vodka, drink it straight or gay. It's like, Jeff, that's very funny, but we're not really doing that, right? And then you notice this is not an artistic rendering. It's a billboard in New York. But don't worry. Yes, this is a little bit edgy, sure, that's fine. But we have another campaign coming out right behind it, so don't worry. Alcoholic for the Catholics, kosher for the Jews, and probably not ideal for the Muslims. Okay. Purer than the driven snow, even if you drove it yourself from Colombia. And my personal favorite, drunk all over the world like Keith Richards. Okay. Look, seriously now, I'm not here to talk about creative and fun advertising, because if we did that, we would be here until midnight, because there's a lot of material to choose from. But I'm not above using it as an example, and this is the example, okay? Brands are a lot like people. We'd rather hang out with people who are many things, who are clever, who are witty, who are a bit of a joker, right? This is in contrast to a lot of old brand thinking that says we have to be about one thing, right? A lot of people said we couldn't be high-end and irreverent. We disagreed. Eric Ryan at Method again dropped a quote on me that was equally right down this same path. He said, if we had been a one-attribute brand, the giants would have figured us out long ago. And therein lies a huge lesson for all of us. What did Robert McKee say? Give them what they want, but not the way they expect to get it. 42 Below and Jeff Ross are not alone. We are surrounded by examples of brands that have used this complexity, used this nuance and this interestingness to their own advantage. Jim Cook up here at the top. Sam Adams bringing this German mentality to brewing in 1983, back when he first started shipping. And at the same time, a strong educational bent. He wants you to know what beer is and why this 10,000-year-old tradition is important. Beats by Dre. Half the people in this room don't understand that the headphones industry was competitive as hell before they showed up. And Noel Lee, who produced the first ones with Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine, said, you know, the big aha for me, he said, if you're selling to consumers, you're in the lifestyle marketing business, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. Guess what? 70% share now. Sony, Sennheiser, Bose, Bowers & Wilkins, you name it. These are powerhouse brands, all brushed right off the table. This last one here, you may not run into every day. Baidu, largest search engine in China, threw Google on its back by showing unequivocally that Baidu speaks Chinese better than those other guys do. Redefinition of we. 42 Below asks us, where's your interestingness? Where's that nuance? Where's the complexity? Your customers are busy and they're bored and they really don't care about your stuff. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to interact with a customer who has a smartphone in their face, is intricately linked with their friends and their contacts, and are going to talk to each other if you can't draw them into your story? That's a complicated question. Are you writing notes? Do this. What's your version of high-end and irreverent? We heard one earlier today. How about a 5,000-year-old tradition of yoga with artificial intelligence and 3D imaging? What? Yeah, that's fascinating. What's your version of this? You need to know this. You need to think about this. This next one's a doozy, and I really do want you to do this. If you launched a grassroots movement, what would it be? I want you to think bigger than your category. I want you to get away from this idea of saying, this is what we do, and this is my ecosystem, and it's right here. If you stopped for a minute and rhetorically said, we're going to launch a movement around what we do, something bigger than the category, what would that movement be? And importantly, what would you name it? What happens when you name something? You breathe life into it. You create a monster out of it. You personalize it. This is important. And if you do this, your idea of what you do is going to expand geometrically. It's going to be a wonderful experience for you. And this last point here, going back to Jeff Ross and 150 competitors in the high-end vodka business, how brave are you willing to be? Understand something. Please don't misconstrue. It's a fun example, and the advertising's a scream, and we have a great time showing it. I'm not telling you to be edgy. Jeff Ross was a founder. That was his personality. A mutual friend introduced us, one of his countrymen, who described this brand as reeking of New Zealandishness, which I thought was a pretty good phrase. That's who Jeff was and is. That's what he is. And if that's who you are, then I want you to go do it with all your heart. If that's not who you are, I do not want you to be talked into being edgy, because there is nothing so contemptible in the world as a brand that walks on out there to the edge and then beats a hasty retreat. Am I right? Yes, I think so too. Let's shift gears. I want to talk about this second idea. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, I was in the bowels of the Death Star at One Sony Drive, sitting around the boardroom table, and people were handing around the first digital music player, the Diamond Rio. Anyone? Who had a Diamond Rio? Show of hands. Anyone? No one's willing to put their hand up is really what's happening here. The Diamond Rio was the first solid-state digital music player. I'm sitting there with the assembled top echelon of Sony Electronics in the United States. What do you think the reaction in the room was? You think they were showing professional curiosity? Were they tinkering with it? Were they interested in it? Were they afraid of it? No. They laughed. It was contempt. Solid state will never match the audio quality of, get this, linear tape. Serious audiophiles will reject it, said an now forgotten Sony executive whose name is lost to the sands of time, fittingly. You know what the funny thing is? He was right. He's right. Sony were masters of metal tape. They were the masters of metal. These guys invented metal tape. And the audio quality of what they did was magnificent. the funny thing about the audio and the video industry is that now video quality has to keep getting better because we're all going blind. But that's okay, because audio doesn't have to be as good. MP3, you can down rev it because we're all going deaf, which is great, right? That's the way the audio business and the video business work today. Sony was absolutely correct that audiophiles would notice a difference between beautiful metal tape fidelity and solid state. But as a former professor from this university once told me, and this building is made of brick, so what? This thing called the internet happened. All of a sudden you can download music. And linear tape doesn't do well when you're downloading off the internet. Gentleman on the left is Marco Nussbaum. He's standing next to the very dapper Karim Rashid, international industrial design icon, and his partner over here, Matthias Zimmerman. Marco and Matthias give us this beautiful crystallization of changing the rules of the game. He launched a design-driven, premium budget hotel. He's a lifelong hotelier. He spent his entire career. He was quite successful. He was the chief marketing officer of Radisson Worldwide. Then he realized that he drifted kind of far from the reason he got into the business in the first place. He wasn't talking to people anymore. He couldn't help people. So he said, all right, enough. I want to do this all over again. I want to start, and I'm going to be an entrepreneur. All the action's at the low end of the market. All the growth is in business hotels. And yeah, but that's kind of boring. So we got to do something differently. And the tool that he used to approach this problem was questioning the givens of what it meant to have the overnight business stay. Here's one of his rooms. Impossibly hip hotel, isn't it? I don't know if I could actually stay in a room that hip. Maybe I can. I don't know. Maybe I could. I'll tell you what's not in this picture, though. There's no phone on the dresser table. You know what happens when you take a phone out of a hotel? You take a terminal out of every room. You take a PBX out of the back office. You take cabling out of the construction. You take a monthly service agreement out from the system integrator. You take customer service out because, damn it, I didn't make that call to Zurich. All that's now gone. There's no minibar. I had no idea what problems minibars were. You know what you do when you have a minibar in your room? I have to send a person into every single room every single day. I have to open the thing up. I got to count those bottles. I got to restock those bottles. I have to buy more inventory. And at the end of the day, the guy still says he didn't drink that little bottle of cognac anyway. There's no premium television in there, which is okay. Come on, let's be honest. As a result, everything one can do walking into that hotel is taken care of at the point of transaction. You check in, you swipe a credit card, you're done. There's nothing left to buy. This isn't a hotel. This is a comfortable vending machine. In the morning, you just leave. No checkout means no checkout person. He stripped all the cost out of this place. Look in the back. You see those hangers? There's no closet in this room. You know why? Because you don't need a closet. The average business stay, one night. Hang your stuff up on the hook. You're done. No closet door, less square footage, more rooms on the hall. Game, set, and match. This room is 59 euros a night. Not bad. Highest occupancy rate in Bremen and in Hamburg, 5 stars on TripAdvisor, and an absolutely rabid fan base on social media. Why? Because they get it and they dig what he did. Examples of companies that are changing the rules surround us as well. Look at Zipcar. Now here's a great example because they have taken advantage of these structural shifts that have happened in our lives. And I'm not just talking about smartphones, and I'm not just talking about location-based services and GPS. That's the heart and soul of what they do. It's true. But the real story here is, it's politics. It's less parking in urban areas. It's consumer sentiment. I care about my carbon footprint. It's economics, what they used to call pocket problems. This company launched in the US in the teeth of the recession. What if I didn't have to buy a car? What if I didn't have to park it anywhere? What if I just could get a car for an hour? Is that so bad? I wasn't in the room when Hertz first heard about Zipcar. I guarantee you it was the exact same conversation that Sony did when they heard about the Diamond Rio. Look at Monster Cable. Can you imagine the business model? Can you imagine pitching this to investors? Okay, I realize they put it in the box for free, but I'm going to launch a premium product. It's going to work great. And it did, because they changed the rules of the interactions. They created a choke point in the channel where you had to buy it. And you know what happens when you're already shelling out that much money? The guy says, well, you got to get the gold-plated cables. And you say, fine, put it in the box. I'll take it. Regis is now the world's largest real estate holder. Office space on demand, the number 2 line item on corporate America's budget, outside of head count. And these guys turned it into a variable expense. That's shifting. And you know what the driver here was? Politics. EU. Everyone needed to open up an office in Brussels. And Mark Dixon sitting in a coffee house, overhearing these conversations, and bang, he's now one of the most successful entrepreneurs on the globe. Prize Hotel asks us this very important question. Can you see your business through an absolute neophyte's eyes? Can you be constructively naive enough to question what we're all too smart to question about our own business? You still taking notes? Start here. How do you question the business? How do you question the absolute structural underpinnings of the business you've been in for years? How do we take advantage of these structural shifts in our market? You know, the thing is, about this entire area of study, this is so easy to see in the rearview mirror. And it's so bloody hard to do on purpose. It's possible, though. It's possible. What you need to do is have the right set of lenses. And you need to know how to populate each one of these shifts, whether it's technology, economics, politics, sentiment, whatever it happens to be. It takes rigorous analysis. And if you go through this process, you know what's going to happen? You're going to come up with a list of 10 completely stupid ideas. And they're going to look stupid because no one's ever done them before. But if you sit on that list for about 3 years, you're going to find 5 startups that are doing half the things you wrote on that whiteboard 3 years ago. And then you kick yourself. I know. I've gone through this before. It's galling. How can we not just focus on the technology, not just the obvious things? Think about Monster Cable for a minute. We didn't talk deeply about that, but you're all familiar with the brand. What if you just shifted interactions? Just shifted perceptions, not the technology. Everything doesn't have to center on the smartphone and the tablet. What if you just changed a marathon into a sprint, or a sprint into a marathon? Can you shift the definition of time in your business? Speaking of shifting marathons into sprints, let's move to the last one. Translating ideas into action. On the far left side there is the right shoulder, it looks like, of a fellow by the name of Oli Schach. And Oli is the number 2 mechanic on Sebastian Vettel's Formula One racing car on the Red Bull racing team. He leads a team of 22 people who change 4 tires in 1.9 seconds. I did this talk last year in London, and I made the mistake of saying 4 tires in 3.2 seconds. And half the audience rushed the stage. The Brits take Formula One very seriously. And do we have any hooligans in the audience today? That's why we have security. I know we have several. So I asked Oli about this, and I said, how do you create a speed-based culture in an environment like this? And he gave me kind of a blueprint that has resonated well with a lot of people, and I want to share it with you. Yes, you have to start with functional skills, of course. You find people with the right hand-eye coordination. You find them with the right propensity to do that. And they train mercilessly. He told me that he and his 4-man team, who are responsible for the front right corner, are changing 100 tires a day. Car goes around the track, zit, take the tire off, put a new tire on, zit, off it goes. And there it goes. It comes back around, you do it again. They get very good at body placement, at who stands where, how we do things. But that's not enough. Next comes this ability to be comfortable under conditions of high pressure. There are people who are quite comfortable having the ball in their hands with 1 second left on the clock. And there are a lot of excellent, wonderful people who are not. We need the former on our team if you want a speed-based culture. And that's not enough. This last point here is critical. The overwhelming desire to win. Ole talks about the fact that the front right corner is faster than the other 3 corners. And it matters to him a lot. These 4 things, functional, training, pressure, desire to win. That is a blueprint for creating a speed-based culture. I've given this talk to Silicon Valley high-performing software engineering teams, to hardware teams, to entrepreneur organizations like yourselves. And the guys who do this close their eyes and they nod their heads. That is exactly the way we do it too. This is a great blueprint for how you create this. This gentleman here is Mike Cassidy. He is a rather iconic figure in Silicon Valley circles. He founded a company called Direct Hit back in the late 90s, one of the first search engines. 18 months after opening his doors, he was acquired by competitor Ask Jeeves for $530 million. He then took about 90 seconds off and launched his next startup, which at the time was called Ultimate Arena, which was an online tournament sort of competition for online gamers. He realized that wasn't where he needed to be, so he did a little pivot. And he said it became an instant messaging platform for online gamers. He called the company Xfire. Xfire took 24 months start to finish. He sold it to Viacom for $130 million. So for those of you keeping score at home, that's 3.5 years. And I don't know, it was $700 million. It was a good stretch of time for Mike. He did okay. I asked him, you're known in these circles for being someone who can launch these speed-based cultures. How do you do it? And he said it was really very simple. Every time they formed a company, he said we would all get into the boardroom and I would say, I want you to yell and scream and say, Mike, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my life. And here's why. And then we're going to make a decision and you're going to align behind that decision. You're going to say, 15 minutes ago I hated this idea, but now I see a way to make it better. There's no room on a high-performing team for I told you so. Period. 4 big insights. We're going to make decisions as a team, as a group. You're going to bring evidence to the table. Facts, not feelings. We're going to make that decision. Then we're going to align behind it and go. There's good news. You can take those 4 points home with you right now. You can drop your head, look at your phone, and send that to your team, to your company, and say, starting tomorrow, we're going to have a facts, not feelings approach, and I guarantee you, you're going to see instant results by doing so. I've worked for one speed-based culture in my life, and it was the most liberating experience I've ever had professionally. Speed-based cultures are not limited to 5-man startups. Samsung's $240 billion. You know how they do it? They've learned to master the white space between these enormous functional silos that they have. Look, if you are the world leader in display technology, the world leader in lithium-ion technology, and the world leader in static RAM, guess what? Rub those 3 silos together and you get a smartphone. Because that's all a smartphone is, those 3 things. Intuit has this wonderful expression they call ending the internal debate. We've all been in that meeting, right? Here's the interesting thing. When I wrote this chapter on speed and I studied speed-based cultures, I discovered something that for me was a big aha, because I thought this was the throwaway chapter. I thought this was the easy one. Because everyone says, look, I mean, smaller companies are competing against bigger companies. Well, you can be faster. I said, yeah, it's all great. There's just a big problem with that. You can't take a to-do list of 100 items and do it in half the time and get the results you're looking for. You're going to get sloppy and you're going to make mistakes. And that's not why you're doing this. What I found was that these speed-based cultures tended to not just make decisions faster, they tended to make them better. And the reason they made them better is because they had discovered a way to strip all of the useless fat out of the process so they could get better input in earlier. So we can have that robust debate sooner, which means we get bigger, better results that much faster. That was a huge insight for me. I thought it was just about hustle. Xfire asks us, how can we compete on the basis of speed? And that's a good place to start. How do we instill a facts, not feelings approach to our culture? A lot of companies can't do this. They stumble on this because they feel everyone needs to have their say, which is wonderful, as long as everyone understands that their say means, come with evidence, please. Come with facts. You don't have to have 40 pages of proprietary data. Did you talk to a couple of customers first? Did you do a couple of searches? Do you have insight that is hard and tangible? If no, those people tend to get weeded out over time. Can we give our market one more chance to tell us we're still wrong? That's what a speed-based culture is for. It's not about launching that final version before everyone else. It's about launching the next iteration so the market can tell us, no, it's still wrong. So we can retool it and refine it and relaunch it, and they can tell us, close but not quite. So we can retool it and relaunch it, and we can be that much better because the giant next to us is now ponderously launching version 1. They're now 2 iterations behind us. Mike Cassidy talked about launching a new version of Xfire every 2 weeks. His competitors, MSN, AOL, it took them longer than 2 weeks to assemble their teams to do competitive analysis. By the time these guys got into the room, Mike had left. The campfire was cold, the trail was lost. You can't compete with what you can't catch. That's the big insight here. How can we get inside our giant's timing? See, here's the thing. Once you're fast enough to be proactive, you can now be fast enough to be reactive. You have a first strike capability. You can move faster than your giant can move. That also means you can react to competitive shifts in the market because you've instilled a culture of execution. Facts, not feelings, right? That's the big insight on how you create a speed-based culture. I said up front this was an impossibly short period of time to get all this done. If you've been feverishly, furiously writing notes, I appreciate it. I think these are good things to take out of this conversation. Quick recap on a few points. Number 1, how do we seize the narrative? How do we hijack the conversation and drag it to a place we know we can win, right? How can we change the rules? How do we take advantage of structural shifts that our giant has not noticed yet? How is it that Sony didn't really comprehend non-linear recording? They knew the internet was there. Because they were experts, that's why. Because they were the world's experts. They knew better. How do we translate ideas into action and create a culture of execution? I'm easy to find. I hope that this is helpful. I'll tell you what, if it's not helpful and you're confused about something, I want you to contact me. And I would be more than happy to talk to you about it. That's how you find me. You can go to killinggiants.com. You can go to stephendenny.com. You can just misspell my name so many different ways. This is easy. It's my Twitter handle, and that's my email. If this was helpful and you want to continue the discussion, I want you to contact me. So that was the purpose in getting us together today. I do believe stories are equipment for living. I do hope you have a chance to look through Killing Giants, and I hope you find something in there that helps you get that 1 degree beyond where you are today. One rhetorical question that's going to help you sort of unlock something that has maybe stopping your progress. I hope you topple that Goliath in your industry. Look, I'm thrilled to have been able to come back. It's been great meeting you. I said earlier that I love all the newness, the ideas, the people that I've had a chance to talk to here. I'm thrilled to see everything I've seen. But I think you'll agree that some things have not changed in 30 years. Some things have not changed a bit in 30 years' time. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time. I'm more than happy to take whatever questions you like. Thank you very much. Professor Jess, I'm at your convenience. Did anyone have questions? Thanks.
Yeah, you want to take a few questions?
Happy to. If anyone's got a question, I'd be happy to answer it now. If you'd prefer to do it at the reception, of course, you can grab me there, but what the heck, we're all here. Anyone? Poorman? Anyone? Hind? Yes, sir.
What's the most common mistake you've heard from all your interviews, the biggest regret these guys have that they made the mistake in the process?
Well, that's loaded. You know what? Here's the thing. When I talk about, what defines the giant killer, I'd love to be able to say that it's, most of them are left-handed, and most of them, and they defy these descriptions so completely because, in one moment you're talking to a pure entrepreneur, like Robin Lee of Baidu, or Jim Cook of the Boston Beer Company. And the next year talking about someone like Scott Griffin, who came in as the new chief at Zipcar and took it to where it needed to go. They're not always of a type. I think the one thing that I've seen that does define them, I know I'm kind of skirting around your question because I'm not quite sure how to address it completely. The one thing that I have found, and this came from a conversation I had with a client a while ago now, because they weren't who I was expecting. They're not the kind of company that typically would look at Killing Giants and say, oh, that's us. This was kind of a household name brand, very large, Fortune 50. And I kind of blurted out, I'm sorry, this is a great conversation, but why are we talking? I mean, you don't have these problems, do you? And the guy said, we're number 3, and we hate it. And to me, that was like, I said, perfect. This is exactly, to me, that crystallized this idea that, giants come in all shapes and sizes, and the Davids do too. When I was at Sony, I ran audio tape. Why, that story was rather personal to me. We were scared to death of TDK. Tokyo Denshin Kogaku. They were this big compared to $86 billion Sony Electronics. But you know what? In my business, in my little slice of the world, they were tough. So, to me, that's what I would typically say. That's what defines the difference between that giant killer and the also-ran. The guy who's got 5th place in market share and is completely content to stay there. It's a whole different animal. Yes, sir.
Take the New Zealand vodka guy.
Yep, Jeff Ross.
Jeff Ross. Did he talk about difficulties in raising capital because his ideas were so wacky, and if he put some of those, advertisements up front, maybe the average person would walk out of the room and say, this guy's crazy?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I can't give you details about his funding because I don't know. We didn't have that conversation.
Well, Boston Beer Company.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff exited a couple of years ago. He actually sold to Bacardi, which is going to be an interesting $130 million for 42 Below. 130 million Australian, I should have said, which is different, right? Big hit, and he's selling this incredibly irreverent, extraordinarily edgy brand into an extremely conservative, I don't care what they say, an extremely conservative environment. And I don't think anyone knows what's going on right now because they're, the management, the new management is turned over a couple of times. Question in the back. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm curious, one of the things that you said in 4 points, so 2 of them is the right team with the right skills. And one of the conversations that's come out of some of the meetings here is I'm personally about to take on some really big giants and kind of a cool opportunity. And looking for how do we identify the right team. I want to run something by you that gets your reaction to it, which is that, part of making sure we have the right team is, perhaps drawing out the org chart, identifying the people, the boxes, chief marketing officer, head of,
Right.
chief, head of sales, CFO, whomever, and then from that identifying, and have our whole senior management team, by the way, who's some of the guys, as my point, might not be fitting the right boxes.
Right.
I want to go through an exercise to kind of flesh it out, and to be able to identify the boxes, then write job descriptions, everybody agree on the job descriptions, and does that then all of a sudden make it obvious that maybe somebody doesn't quite fit in the box and we need to find a new one?
It very well might.
Is that the right way to approach it?
I think it's a good way to approach it. I mean, you have to start with functional skill because I think there is a tendency with earlier stage companies to rely on the devil we know. And it's okay. I mean,
Former partners moving into a new business together, that we were successful here, but now we got a different.
former partners, that's putting a good spin on it. Usually it's the brother-in-law. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. Usually it's, it's the cousin, who gets foisted on it. Family businesses are a whole different thing. But, the bottom line is, it starts according to, what the Red Bull team showed to me. Is you have to start with functional skills. They actually, there was a rule change in Formula One, and I believe it was 2010, where they took the refueling out. You couldn't refuel during a race. So what that did, it was a very strange thing because from the driver's perspective, it necessitated certain changes. But for the pit crew, it changed their lives. Because a minute ago, they had all day long to change those tires. Because the gating factor was refueling. You tip the tank up. Gravity only works so fast. It goes, from the tank into the gas tank here. I can take my time, get the car up, take the nut off, But now, with no refueling, they were on the clock. So they took the entire team to the UK's Olympic training facility. These are a bunch of pit mechanics, not athletes, right? And they put them through this battery of hand-eye coordination drills, and they literally engineered based on the results. You talk about putting the job descriptions there before the names. They literally broke these guys down into a matrix of response time and manual dexterity. And that's how they assigned where they were going to put these people. Once you had that done, then you moved on to training. And you're talking about training in this sense, meaning 100 different times a day you're changing that tire. But they're recording everything, high-speed video. And they're looking at body angle. And they're looking at, I'm the guy with the wheel nut gun. I'm going to put my left foot forward here and my right foot here. And the guy holding the tire that's going to get replaced is 1 foot behind my, completely engineered. And then from there it goes into more of the psychological stuff. But, to your point, the finer you can get in terms of functional skill set, I think is probably a good first step, and the rest of it's teamwork and mentality. I don't know if you can layer that on. There's a lot of turmoil and a lot of turnover that's going to happen in an environment like his, high stakes, high dollar. But extract from that what you will. I hope I kind of answered your question there. Yes, sir. One more question?
You talked earlier about iterations and learning from your markets. I was wondering what you think the best approach in doing that is, and if you agree with the lean startup model.
Yeah, I think the idea of quickly getting product out into the market but having extremely clean data traps so that you're capturing the data. And it's shocking to me today how many companies think they're doing this, and yet data is spilling on the floor because they're not capturing it. Everything is data input. A lot of companies that love to talk about big data can't really do it because they don't have their arms around it completely. If you're in a channel-based business, for example, you're measuring sales out. You know, you're measuring sell in, not sell out sometimes. If you're in a retail environment and you're getting the right kind of reporting, you can kind of get close to it. But the key here is how quickly can you make a meaningful decision based on empirical evidence? That's it. Now, depending on the business you're in, if you're launching an app, you've got everything right here. You got all the data that you're going to need. At least you can. And some businesses that won't be possible. But I think Mike Cassidy, his example of being able to quickly do this. Intuit's another great example of that, and I didn't have time to talk about them deeply here. It is in the book, so I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Intuit talked about how they had really built out their communities of users so that they were getting an extreme amount of input from their users, where everyone was a beta tester. And as a result, and this is one of those psychological triggers that is critically important, if you can get someone to voluntarily give you that piece of information, they radicalize very quickly. We had that conversation about crowdfunding. What if you actually look at crowdfunding in terms of publicity and evangelist recruitment on equal footing? It's like the moment we can get a user to tell us something in a public forum, even a private forum, you've made them an insider. And that's a very powerful tool. So, you know, that's the long and short of it when it comes to that. Very often, when you find yourself working in larger companies, and this I think is just a matter of gravity and centrifugal force and hubris, big companies are very good at making grand gestures. They're very good at ponderous, enormous launches with huge agency support and enormous amounts of moving parts. And that's great if you're right. That's why they typically make very conservative decisions. When you are smaller, when you have that culture of execution, you're in a position to say, look, it's okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to launch a product, whether it's in a test market, whether it's broadly, you put it in the App Store, wherever it happens to go, with the intention of quickly pulling it back and saying, I got the user input, I know where we're wrong, rev it. We're not going to fix it. We're going to fix something, and we're going to relaunch, and we're going to see what happens now. And it's going to be this constant give and take and push and pull. And frankly, that just gets you there so much faster. Big companies hate measuring their results because once they've launched that enormous shot put off their shoulder, there's a check mark that goes on that quarterly objectives, and we're done. Great. Good work, everyone. You know, how did it do? Great. Fine. Did you measure it? No, not really. We don't need to. Everything was good. Everything was good. You know, and they gloss over it. And that's the way big companies, that's the way the internal politics of most big companies operate, for better or for worse. Use that to your advantage. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate it very much.